All right, guys, so this week's Ask Me Anything question is actually pretty broad. It talks about if I would rather own, it actually came from Instagram, and the question was, would I rather own a $10 million company or a $500,000 company? So that's a very broad question because there's very variables to what type of companies would I rather own in each sector, and then if they're residual in nature or they're just kind of like they're selling a product. There's a lot of variables here. However, the context of the question, I think, in the way I understand it, and I guess whoever asked it can correct me on this YouTube video, but the idea was, would I rather own a very large company with $10 million in revenue? Would I rather own a company with just $500,000 in revenue that's smaller and easier to manage? Well, the real answer to that question comes to the understanding of, if that $10 million revenue, what does it translate to when you actually look at your take home? So I give you a good example with my own company. So I have a company that is nearing $10 million now called VIP Motoring. That company is outstanding. It does a lot of sales. Most of our sales items are such huge tickets. We get to that number very quickly. So $10 million is not a very large number when you consider yourself selling items that are $500,000–$600,000, right? 20 sales and you're pretty much there. So you got to think about it that way. Just because there is a $10 million in revenue does not mean you really have a powerful 7–8 figure company. What you do have is you have $10 million in revenue that could translate to $0 in profit and even a deficit. Not in all cases. I am part of another company that roughly does $4 to $5 million in revenue and still has a good 50% take-home rate, you know, and that's a strong fit. But I like to think of a company this way: if you have just a $500,000 company, but you're taking home roughly $300,000 or $400,000 in profit, then think about what happens to that company when you take it to 10 million, right? Then if you're multiplying both the net profit and then the actual revenue itself, and you're taking it to 10 million, that's incredible. So I guess I would rather own a business, even if it's a $10,000 business or a $50,000 business, rather than even going into the $500,000. If it's even a $10,000 business and it has a lot of great ways that for it to actually not just hit a revenue number, but also keep most of the revenue as profit. They're selling a residual product, they're selling a digital product or something that people want, yet has no high expense of making, then that's the type of business that I want to be in, because not only is residuals you're going to get paid on every month, but then the important part is that it's easier, right? You're selling something that you can just transpond in an email or give to someone, like information or so on and so forth, or a service, without actually having to put a lot of labor, a lot of expenses into it, or a lot of cost in building it. And those, to me, are the best types of businesses, because you're ultimately able to scale those higher, you know, into that $10 million mark or whatever it is, and you can do so usually keeping your profit margins the same, or ultimately being very close to the same. So if you have a 60% profit margin and then take to 10 million, you have 45% profit margin, that's still very good. You're still going to take home a lot more than a business who's doing $5 million and takes home half of that. So being able to maximize your net profit rather than just looking at your, or just actually being able to maximize your gross profit, I think would be the key to having a functional and good business, regardless of the revenue it makes. So when I gauge what type of business I want to be in, I gauge what type of industry I want to be in. Then I look at the business model. Then third, I look at the revenue model. And fourth, I look at the profit margins and how to actually make these profit margins blow up even further, assuming that you can scale the business higher. So I think that would be the best way for me to answer that question. Don't focus so much on the higher sales revenue number, but rather focus on the actual amount that's being taken home, and also the amount of it that is profit, and also how the scalability of the business really is. It's almost like if you're in a car dealership business and you're selling a lot of cars, then you're going to have very high profits. But if you have a lot of cost of the cars themselves, the repair, the maintenance, the service department, the employees, all of these things add up, and then you have a very small profit margin. So you have to do that on multiple levels or sell a lot of cars in order to actually make a profit, you know? Which is why, in a way, the car dealers are greedy. They make money from the finance office, from the service department, because they need to make up for that cost constantly, right? It's a big operation, it runs hard. And for them to be profitable and to increase those margins, they're not really making their margins on each and every new car. So they have to make it on the used cars, they have to make it on service department, they have to make it on the financing. That's where they're going to combined make a good profit. So I would rather own a smaller business, easier to manage, that's scalable up, where the profit margin is much higher and better than a larger business. They're like, can I come work for you? I will do anything to come work for you. I have a lot of requests through my website VIP Motoring for my car business, where people just say,